the local P2J VTI head. After all the K series and the B series that we've shown, this deserves some love. So we'll show you how we port the VTI head properly to gain good efficiency, some tricks to help you substantially get some gains. This way, you won't have to incorrectly modify it to run a PO8 cam. You can see here also we will talk about the oil line. That is not really dirty oil, and we'll talk about that later. We'll go into detail on why it does this and the downsides and the causes of it. All right. And you can see here that oil level it's turned into a line, right? And we will delve into that deeper later. Look, it's not really because of just dirty oil. It's more than that, and you will see. And we will delve deeper into that than expected and let you guys know more. Alright, now before we start, here are the stock ports. As you can see, we're gonna discuss about the ridges and the ledge. And look here, the port turns to the left because it's for swirl, you know. Wait, let me invert the picture. There, that's why I say it turns to the left, because when you look at it properly, it's to the left. Now here's the exhaust. It's really not as good or as efficient as a D16y8, but it's pretty much the same as a PO8, and it can flow really good when ported correctly. Alright, here we start off with a carbide cutter just to get the shape that we want and not take too long, you know, because if we go with the sanding roll, it's gonna take forever. Okay, let's go faster. Alright, we're getting the shape to how we desire it, and we're not trying to straighten the port, okay? We're not doing that. What we're trying to do is improve the shape to get it more efficient, to swirl even better, because if we improve the efficiency, even though it's economy, it still improves power, you know. All right, now let's go. Now onto the port floor. We're gonna get the necessary shape, and you don't try to remove too much on the floor because it's not gonna help the short turn. Speed it up. Right there, we're almost done. All right, just gotta do the bowl, and then we head to the bench. All right, here we go. You know, a lot call it throat. We call it throat, but also the bowl, you know. So we take care of this. Wait, to speed it up. This way we can head to the bench and show you guys how it looks initially before running or before having passes on the sanding roll, right? Okay, here we are now on the carbide finished ports. You can see we didn't really hit up everything, so we're gonna come closer, take a closer look with better lighting on the picture so you can see it better. Now, as you can see, we didn't really touch every single part of the port because it doesn't need to be bigger. We just touched on the contours that needed improvement, and you can see very well, right? Now let's go on to the before and after. Here's the stock ports, and then the carbide hit ports. You can see it, right? And this angle is the stock ports again, and then with a carbide finish. You see the difference, right? And then this angle again, stock, and then the carbide hit situation or phase. Now let's head on to the exhaust. Alright, now the thing here is it's actually quite fun, you know, especially with the carbide on the exhaust. The only problem with this is, okay, wait, let's speed it up. The only problem is that, I mean, the only challenge or the main challenge is how to get it completely or close to completely round from the valve seat all the way to the port exit, because it has to be uniform in enable for it to flow really well. You don't have to go crazy on certain shapes and whatnot, it's just get consistent. Now here's on the floor. All right, we're gonna get it really good now. All right, and the thing with that is even the floor of the exhaust port, lowering it too much will actually create a bigger bend. So you try to avoid that. All right. And with those who will pay attention would notice how we shape our own exhaust ports, right? So now let's quickly wash this off and let's go to the workbench for some pictures. Oh yeah, it's looking good, you know? You can see the shape is getting closer to how we like it or how we prefer it. Now let's look closer. You'll see here, look. And you can see we didn't totally hug it out. You can still see the casting marks, right? You can remove that, but you know, that's killing airflow or airspeed. Now let's go with the back and forth. I mean, before and after, all right? Now you can see this is the stock port that we took a picture earlier on, and look, the carbide finish. And you can see it's not totally hugged out, right? On this angle, you can see the casting mark, and look, after the carbide, you can still see it, but it's just not as prominent, you know? Here on this other angle, the same thing. You can show it here. See? Oh, just you wait when you get finished with the sanding roll with the 80 grit. But before that, let me talk about this. It's really important. Alright, now, as we showed this earlier in the video, you see that line? We're gonna show you with a few arrows. We're gonna pause it here. Look, you see that line? That is not dirty oil. When you look closer, it actually is burnt oil or cooked oil. Look close, right? That's not dirty oil. That's burnt oil. And look at in this angle, you can see it's the oil level that started to coke up or crisp up, right? You can see the line, right? And it's actually really quite level, you know? And the thing here is this engine or the engine that this was on, it never had an overheat problem. And you know, the cause of this is interesting. It's due to running no thermostat, and that's because without the thermostat it ruins the coolant flow, and you can see it on this. Look, and this is the thermostat housing with the water pipe. The coolant comes from the radiator goes in here and then to the water pump, same here, and also from here it goes to the water pump there, right? Here's what happens with our thermostat and what it affects in flow. Okay, the thermostat is installed right inside here. So when you remove it, coolant flow just goes straight, you know, to the water pump. But the problem is on this part here, this is a line that goes to the manifold flange into the head. This way, even when your thermostat is open, it still has coolant flow going to the head, cooling it. So without that, your cylinder head is actually running a little bit higher than normal operating temperatures. It's not overheating, but it's still running way too hot. That cooks oil. That is why you see in this, the oil is cooked, and you can see it on that line, right? That means it's running really hot, but not overheating. And you know what's the other problem with that? Our computer box, when it senses a higher temperature that's operating, it starts to pull timing. That also means you're not running as good or strong. That's probably why you're consuming more gas or fuel, right? At the end of this video, we will announce something that's gonna be super interesting for you guys. Now let's go back to porting this head. We're going with the 80 grit now. Let's go. It's gonna be really good. Oh yeah, and to clarify, without the thermostat, the head still gets cool. But the problem with that is that, you know, from the water pump, it goes straight into the block. So after the coolant is already warmed up by the block, then it goes to the head. So that's not good. Alright, now our ethyl alcohol and soapy water mix. It's actually Joy dishwashing soap. That's why it's green. Okay, we're gonna spray on it because it's for the 80 grit. This way, the finish is really good. Then you will see it once we finish the sanding roll session. You know, it's gonna be really good. You see. And later, we're gonna show you this shot of this area on the number 4 port because of the EGT, the lump. You know. Now let's speed this up so it's gonna be really good. On the previous heads, you remember we all used 80 grit, right? But this time we might actually go to 120 grit for the finish, just so that we can show you guys the difference. And actually, you know, to be honest, both finishes are good enough. You know, I mean, they both perform really good. So you can't say that the 80 grit makes more power because it's just the same, you know. And I mean, you know, we can talk about roughing up the ports for the atomization, but that's gonna take forever. All right, now we're on to the floor. We spray it a bit with our mix of ethyl alcohol and soapy water, and then we hit it up with the 80 grit. All right, and you're gonna see it's slowly getting to the stage or the finish that we actually want or shooting for. It's really good, you know. This is actually quite addicting for me, you know. Okay, now let's go faster with the time lapse. All right, you can see it's getting to the finish or texture that we're shooting for, right? Okay, now let's go with the roof. Let's finish it. And you can see it's starting to look really, really good, right? Now onto the bowl. We spray it with our lube or ethyl alcohol mixed with soapy water, right? This way the finish becomes really good. Let's speed it up now with a carbide. With the sanding roll, sorry. Okay, now we're gonna speed it up. Alright, you'll see this when it's finished. It's gonna look really, really good. And you know, it's not impossible or it's not unusual that we sometimes go back and forth to 120 to 80 grit, and sometimes even we go back to the carbide cutter or the carbide burr, and then we go back to the 80 grit because you know we start to see certain shapes that we need to do. So we do go back and forth, you know. All right now, okay, we decided to finish up the intake with 80 grit. So we just finished washing it. And then on the exhaust, that's where we're gonna go with 120 grit. After the 80, of course. Okay, now let's look close. And then later we're gonna check with the stock, carbide, and the current. Now look at that. And you can see it's still curved to the left. We didn't straighten it, and look at the short turn, it looks really good. And on this angle, you can see it's really efficient. Now onto the stock ports again. Then we go to the carbide, and then after this is the 80 grit finish. Look, it's so nice. On a different angle, same thing. Carbide and then finish. And here too, now we can head back to the exhaust. All right, we're going with the 80 grit still just to get the initial shape really fast. Then we go to the 120 grit. Now let's speed it up. And it's quite fun to see it, right? I mean, it's quickly getting to the finish that we actually are shooting for, you know? And then you know it takes the shape, and then you know you gain efficiency just like that. And it's really a big help, the ethyl alcohol and joy dishwashing soap mix, because look, it's really clean and it looks really, really good, right? I mean, the cleanliness and the finish. Now onto the bowl, we spray some, and you can see here, look, it's starting to get lighter, like really, really clean. And you'll see on the pictures later, it looks really, really good. Or it would look really good, you know. Because if not, I have to redo it again with more spray. And you know, sometimes we get to do that twice just to get the desired cleanliness that we need. Now, after this, we can head to the bench and show you the finished exhaust ports. Now, would you look at that? This is how it looks with the 120 grit finish. So we actually did the 120 grit pass, so you can see it here now. Bam! Look at that. And you remember earlier we said the tricky part on the exhaust is how to port it as round as possible from the valve seat all the way out, right? And you can see here, that's what we tried to do, right? You can see from the bowl to the divider and even the sidewall, we tried to get it as round as possible without hogging it out. And then as usual, we go back from the stock ports here, right? And then we go to the carbide finish, if you remember this, and then to the finished state. Look, you can see it's actually gonna be very efficient, and that's the good thing here, you know. And don't get me wrong, porting it bigger does not make it more efficient because you still need airspeed for the induction stroke, you know. Because the better exhaust scavenging you do, the more negative you get in the chamber. This way, on the induction stroke, it pulls even harder. Now let me talk about the planned series that we have. Aside from my engine series, we plan to find a candidate like a VTI so that we could do a rebuild series. But the twist here is we would like to base run on the dyno, the car, as is before the rebuild. This way, once we get it done and fully refreshed, we would go and do another base run to have a comparison between a surplus or a stock condition compared to a brand new condition tweaked out stock engine. Ideally, we would prefer a stock box or stock ECU. This way, it lessens the variables, but we will see. And I know you guys have never seen that, a dyno comparison between the stock and newly refreshed but stock engine. Okay, now here's the number 4 port, and you can see the EGR bulge, right? Not EGT, sorry. And you can see this is what we go through trying to clean it up without actually, removing it or just having trouble with it. And look at how good that is. And also, just an additional information or reminder, you can click here for this video on what you shouldn't do to your VTI head. And you can also click for the latest one here